everybody, my name is James Feeney. Welcome to or back to my channel. Lately I've been thinking a lot about how I read or who I am as a reader, and I've been meeting a lot of wonderful people and other readers, well specifically other readers are the people that I'm talking about, and I have been learning a lot about their reading style, finding a lot of unique differences between reading styles from person to person, and I think it is something that is entirely unique to an individual despite the common resources we may all have learned from or places that we come from or backgrounds. So a lot of different things inform how we read, who we are as readers. So I wanted to come on and share a bit about how I read, or I guess who I am as a reader, and in turn, I guess potentially I would love to know and have responses to this. So in a way, if this could become a VR or does become a VR, I would be thrilled because I am so curious about a lot of other people on YouTube's reading style. There are a lot of you out there that I watch, and I'm seeing bits and pieces of how you read, but I would love to hear it spoken to me or explained to me as I'm hopefully going to explain to you. And this is in part inspired by a recent VR that I actually responded to as well, but it was created by Simon at the Hermit's Cave. And the purpose of that one was to get to know each other on, say, TarotTube or YouTube, to get to know each other a bit more closely, or get to know each other just in general as people, as human beings, and who we are. But the purpose that I'm hoping to get from this one, and the purpose of this sort of video, would be to understand each other as readers, how we read, who we are when we are reading, and what that means for us. So I guess it will become more clear as I begin to answer a series of questions that I've designed to helpfully let you guys know who I am as a reader and how I read. So I will start with the first question, and it's the first question is the primary system that I use, and that for me right now is the Thoth system, which is a bit newer to me. It's one that I got turned on to in the mid to late half of 2019. I'd had it around and used it a bit all throughout 2019, and it wasn't one that I really started to study heavily until maybe maybe like half a year ago or less. But it's been quick. I've been reading a lot of books and just basically using it exclusively, both for myself and others. So that's the primary system I'm using right now. I would say that for the longest time and for many years, the Rider-Waite-Smith was my primary system, and it's one that I feel very comfortable with, that I'll return to if there's ever any shadow of a doubt in terms of Thoth. Thoth is beginning to feel a bit more like my home. I think the feelings that I get when I'm using Thoth, the excitement and almost the rightness to it, how it clicks with me and how I click with it, is what I almost wish I got from the Rider-Waite-Smith in the beginning. It took me a very long time to really buckle down and start studying, practicing tarot on a regular basis. It took a while, and I think if I had started, say, with Thoth, I might have just gotten going a lot more easily and with a lot less fuss, because it just feels like it jives a lot better with who I am and my personality and my interests. So my primary system of use right now is Thoth, but I would say RWS, Rider-Waite-Smith, is a close second and may return to the first spot, but for right now it's Thoth. So that's that. And next, who do I read for is the next question. And I read both for myself and others. I would say it's a pretty even split. I'm reading for myself definitely on a daily basis, but I read for others as well, both in a shop setting and online. And so I have my website, and I do Skype, email, video readings, and I will read in the shop when I'm there, and then I also do events. So, but I read for myself every single day as well, so a very even split, and I think that part of why and how I read for myself influences how I read for others, and I think that being able to read for oneself is very important, and I think that that's a great, more foundational spot before branching out to others. So, yeah, I would say that I read for both myself and others. and that's how I go about it. And I started with myself, and for the first few years I wouldn't read for others, and then it slowly grew in a more natural way from there and became something more just over time, and then it became something that I actually wanted to do, and it took a while to get to the point where I knew I wanted to pursue that. So that's how it all fell into place, I guess. So next I have the style of reading, I guess. So I've kind of broken this down into different types of things. So more of an analytical approach, an intuitive approach, a spiritual approach. So there's going to be two parts to this, but the first is really that style where we fit. Some of us I know really look to the cards, and we look for the exact signs and symbols, and we have meanings for the cards that started with the books but became something more as we practiced, and we have those, and we really play off of what we know and our experience, and how that can, say, combine and become something in a formation within a reading based on the circumstances. So that's a lot more, I would say, in my opinion, analytical. And then there's the intuitive style, which puts a lot of focus on, say, those feelings and thoughts and emotions that come forth that aren't really of the conscious mind so much, that where one speaks a lot more extemporaneously and just off the cuff based on things that might not make any conscious sense in that moment during a reading. And then we have a more spiritual style, which I think is where we would see people that that identify with the title of psychic, or somebody who would potentially connect with guides, or look to higher powers, or believe that there are senses that are beyond the tangible or the conscious mind, so to speak. So those are the three I'm breaking it into three major ones. If you're out there and you don't feel like you fit into any of this, please go for it. But I thought I would just kind of present them in that fashion so that there was a spectrum available, or a spectrum to be seen. And so the question is really about, where does one fall within that as far as their reading style goes. And I think that I have moved throughout all three a bit to some extent. There was a long time where I took things in very analytical sense, and I thought that I would say, in a few, like, going back a while, I almost thought that anything that wasn't analytical was hooey, and that there wasn't really anything there, and I was definitely a skeptic, and all of that. And maybe I was a bit on my high horse at that time, and I needed to have some humility and to gain some experience. And I think then I moved more into an intuitive and spiritual space for a while. And now I would say that I kind of fluctuate through all three. I do believe that I would like to believe that there are things beyond the here and now that exist as almost disembodied entities that are above and beyond us, and that they can that can be an influence, that there's something for us that is beyond the tangible, even beyond just, say, the conscious mind, something that is just sentient and other, or others. I'm not sure quite what. My beliefs are very fluid, but I'd like to believe that there's something more. So I'm very much open to that aspect of reading. I wouldn't say that that's something I rely upon when I'm reading for myself or others, or that I think that I tap into on demand. That's not how it usually works, although I would say that there are some instances where things happen in readings for me that I find very hard to explain, and that's when I think that I would say maybe have dipped into that category more so unknowing. But I think that a solid combination of the analytical and the intuitive combined is really where I would say is my mainstay for readings, and the way that I function and can really actively control and move throughout during a reading. So I don't rely upon that spiritual aspect of, say, what one would identify with a psychic or someone who actively is connecting with guides. I think that those moments for me, when they happen, they're really nice, but I don't like to advertise that that's something that I can do and bring to a reading on demand. So the analytical and intuitive aspect, I think I like to have a strong basis in what I know the cards' foundations to be, and my own personal meanings, and to be able to draw on those correspondences and things that I know of the cards, and then the intuitive aspect. I mentioned in a video where I have a sort of pad where I will do immediate writing sometimes in a reading, and I think that's where the intuition really hops in. Words and phrases and emotions that I write on that are sometimes very disconnected from anything that my analytical mind would have and does glean from the cards, and I will run with those things when I feel them and sense them. So in turn, I think I do a melding. My general reading style is a melding of a more analytical and intuitive scope. So that's how I go about my readings for the most part. And then in the second part of, say, this question, I would say now this is kind of going into more of a subcategory. That was more the way that one, almost your paradigm of reading, where the space that you function within. Now the next question would be the types of readings you do, not necessarily the topics, but the way that you go about delivering readings, or what the purpose of these readings really is at its core. So examples I have are they more of a predictive or fortune-telling aspect, where that's the primary focus? You're looking to look at things in the future or see things as they are now, divine the present, the past, and the future, outside of anything that might be known to the mind, if that makes sense, or events that have yet to happen. So is it of that nature? Is it more of a coaching experience where you are trying to almost create a relationship with maybe yourself or a client that is meant to form a relationship where you strategize and plan for the future and really take stock of what is now, where a trajectory for something to go might be, how we can, say, improve. Likewise, I think I have maybe in of a similar vein, I have more of an evaluative, reflective, and I don't necessarily think of this as coaching, because I think that coaching is really creating an active relationship, whether it be, I think, with yourself and another. I think having more of an evaluative, reflective reading style would be to almost express and use the cards as a tool or a mirror, and to almost be that mirror for either yourself or another, and to really not that you aren't creating a relationship, but you're almost just there to do that for them and to see and to let them almost do with it what they will. So I have that as a category, and then I also have empowering, which I think is more similar to coaching, but again, I think coaching is very much about creating that relationship. I think empowering can be, there's an aspect about it where you are here to serve a purpose of getting a person to a space. When you're an empowering reader, you want them to feel like they have agency and control based on what it is that you're saying, so that they are then more informed and will go forth to incite certain changes and make decisions that they like to. So this is all about, and those are just examples, there are more than that. But I think it's important for me to maybe define the question as well as possible. But as far as the type of readings that I do, I would say and I think for a lot of these, straight answers are going to be very difficult, because we're human beings, we're complex, things change, we're different, no two circumstances are the same. I don't think a lot of us read exactly the same in every circumstance. So I would say predominantly I use tarot in the predictive fortune aspect combined with a reflective, evaluative aspect. So both of these kind of combine. I think that I like to maybe hopefully play the role of that mirror and allow someone to look at themselves, events, emotions, circumstances, both in the past and present, to better understand who they are, what maybe the case is objectively, to look outside of themselves, to look within themselves, and I would hope to be very effective in doing that, and to maybe exude little influence to disrupt what would, say, happen or occur for them on their own, but to very effectively play that mirror, or hold that mirror for themselves, to themselves. Yeah. And then I would say that the fortune telling and predictive aspect comes in whenever that's more inquiry based, but I am comfortable laying out cards for the future and interpreting them accordingly, with the meanings, the feelings that I get, and things like that. So I would say I function within those places as a reader. So an ideal setting or atmosphere is the next question I have. So for me, this would be, of course, not of course, but I would want it to be as comfortable as possible, whether I'm reading for myself or others. I like to generally be sitting, uh, I would say either on the floor or in a chair, but I like to have back support of some type. I find it's very distracting when I feel like I have to be the one to fully support my back. So comfy chair, comfy back support, that's important. I prefer natural or natural lighting and dim lighting. By natural, I don't necessarily even mean just sunlight or moonlight. I mean, to me, a candle is natural because it's a fire, it's a flame. Likewise, if it is artificial light, I don't like harsh fluorescence. I prefer warm yellows and oranges, things of that tone that are maybe muted or not so direct. So dim, natural, soft lighting. I like there to feel like there's an atmosphere. Ooh, our questions are gone. Like there's an atmosphere, definitely candles going, a scent in the air that just feels a bit heavy and mysterious in a way, or magical. I would say I like to have, yeah, my reading cloth. I like to have crystals, ideally. Yeah, and I like it to just be as calm and uh, stress free, no tension. Everyone to just be able to breathe and be freely. And I think that that's one that a lot of people can resonate with. But some people thrive off of a more high energy atmosphere, or they like to stand, or whatever it may be. But that, for me, what I just said is my ideal atmosphere for reading. So next, I would have, this is a category referring to, say, little things that I guess have to do with the technicalities of cards, the cards themselves when we're shuffling, things like that. So first I have, if you read reversals, if I read reversals, and it depends. So with some decks I do, with my just standard Thoth deck and my RWS deck, which are the two decks I primarily use for clients, I do reversals, and I think that I value the fact that there is a reversal. I would say there have been times and periods where I don't do reversals at all, and there are decks, specific decks, that I don't use reversals with. But I think that every card is multifaceted. I think that sometimes a card appearing can be almost in shadow, or its aspect that isn't as dignified, where it would be oppositional to its nature. So say I have it in I'm not doing reversals, but I have a spread position that is allocated for an obstacle, and I get the Two of Cups. I'm probably going to be more inclined to reference its shadow or less dignified aspect. Yes, if I'm not doing reversals, and then if I am, then I'm really going to consider the fact that it is a more critical card position in terms of, say, a reversal or upright. So there's a lot that goes into it, but even when I'm not doing reversals, I know that, not I know, but I feel as though there's just as likely a chance that a card is speaking to an aspect that is more opposite to its nature, or potentially, if that makes any sense. So next I have jumpers, question mark. So do you read jumpers or take jumpers when they pop out of the deck and you're shuffling? For me, I would say it definitely is a case-by-case basis, but there are times when it just feels right, especially if it's a single card that pops out. It really depends on the circumstances, but there is a decent amount of the time when there's a part of me that just wants to take that card and think of it as the card that was meant to come out. So I would say, yes, I do read or take the jumpers and factor them into my readings. And then shuffling style. So I would say with my primary working decks like the Thoth and the RWS, just those standard decks, I like to riffle and bridge. And with decks, I would say it's those decks because to me they're very easy to replace. So I feel okay with the fact that that harsh shuffling style that's going to take a toll on the deck, I can just replace the deck. Those decks aren't really going anywhere anytime soon, so I can just replace them. But if it's, say, an indie deck or a more expensive and nice deck that is more costly and hard to obtain or might go out of print, I tend to be more careful and do hand over hand shuffling, and of course the card stock also plays a role in that. But decks I'm more comfortable with, and those decks I use for clients more, RWS and Thoth, harder bridge and shuffle, riffle and bridge, and then hand over hand for other decks a lot of the time. So next I have the next question. Oh, I'm sorry, low battery. I'm always getting low battery. This battery on this phone is not ideal at this time. Maybe I need a new one. So tone of delivery. So this would almost be the way that your personality would present a reading, both to yourself and others. So options that I have to kind of define the question a bit better, so that you understand what I mean by tone of delivery. It could be constructive, where it's very objective and outlining, say, what something is saying and how it can be worked upon, what something means in terms of something. So it's a lot more objective, analytical. So that could be a presentation style. There's also the more positive mind. This is not to say fluffy or somebody that brushes over harder aspects, but who really likes to put a lot of emphasis on the positive, in hopes or thinking that maybe that is where there's a lot of meat in a reading, and that if somebody is in that spot, that they're maybe more receptive to changes and to acceptance of other things, so that one might leave in a better headspace. So if you're delivering readings in that way, that might be how you go about it. Your tone and the way that you like to speak on things is a bit more positively minded. Next, I have one that's a bit more reflective. So this is somebody who likes to really remove themselves from the way that they are delivering the messages, and is, again, objective, but not in a constructive sense, where they would work with someone to deliberate, say, the meanings and how they might be interpreted. This is more of just a delivery in terms of the person, so it's not like it's so detached that they're making no connections, but they're kind of giving you the message in a way that fits and spurs you, if you're giving it to yourself or to others, to really just think and to run with certain things. And then another delivery style I have is action oriented, which I think is when we're looking to actually do things based on what the cards are showing. So something has taken place. Where are we going to go? What has happened? What are we going to do with this? So it's very high energy, and it's a lot of planning. It's a lot of speaking, and it almost feels like one is constructing and building in a way when there's an action oriented. So I think that those are very high energy individuals in how they deliver something, and there's definitely something. I think that that's a really cool one. It's not me. I'm not that I'm not high. I can't be high energy, but I think that my personality and the way that I speak for readings is somewhere between constructive and reflective. There are some times when I really feel like it is best to present certain messages and explain them, but to allow a client to reflect based on what I've said. And this is more so if it depends on how the interaction. So if it feels like they aren't wanting as much interaction, like they're a more quiet client despite me asking them things, checking in with them throughout, but they seem to be a bit more subdued, and they would just prefer to have me deliver things to them, that's when I take the role of being a more reflective deliverer of messages and a reader. If somebody is a lot more dynamic and interactive in speaking to me, and we have a really sort of back and forth dialogue, I would probably take the role of being a constructive reader, where we would use the cards to evaluate and critically look at both the present, the past, the future, the positive aspects, the negative, what they might mean, and to really break them down. So it really, I would say, those are the two types of delivery I tend towards, and it more so depends on the client than the reading or the circumstance. It's really about the dynamic between me and whoever I'm reading for. And same for myself. I think that when I'm reading for myself, I still tend to go for these two types of tone of delivery for myself in the way that I speak to myself. And depending on the day, I might be feeling more constructive and like I want to read in a constructive way to myself, for myself. And there are other days when I just want to be a lot more reflective and pull cards and just think about them, and eventually let something unravel within me and find insight. So it just depends. And then the final, I guess, question or category within this to tell you guys about who I am or explain how I am as a reader is reading quirks. And I guess as part of this, in explaining it, I have things like correspondences I might tend to draw on, habits I have, and little details that are maybe unique to me, things that I do when I read. So, my reading quirks, I'm trying to think. I definitely like to shuffle. I mean, that's not really a quirk, but I definitely have to shuffle the deck a few times in between any given reading, and I have to feel like it's fully well and good randomized. So I'll do hand over hand and bridging, and I will even go so far as to think like if I'm just going hand over hand like this, they're kind of still going to end up in a relatively same ordering, whether it's exact or not. So I'll do like over, behind, and in my head it allows me to feel like I've randomized better. I feel like I'm mixing up the cards more effectively if I'm doing, say, a riffle and then doing the hand over hand back and forth. That's a little quirk. I would say correspondences that I draw on the most are the elements. I draw on quite a bit. I also draw on astrology quite a bit and colors. So those three aspects are really big ones for me. So I'll look for what sort of elements are at play, what's dominant, where if an element is in a certain place, or say I'm even doing have a signifier card, but I'll almost do the first operation where we see where a card, what pile it occurs in, which will give me an over undertone for the reading, whether it's in, say, the cups or water pile, or the earth or pentacles pile. So I like to factor all of that in, and then within the reading look for elements and connections between them. I'll also look for, like I said, the connections astrologically, and that's a lot more with the Thoth deck because each card has, well, all the minors, ace, not ace through 10, well, technically 2 through 10, have a planet and a sign, and then we still have astrological and planetary and elemental correspondences with the majors, and then the courts are kind of a duality elementally, so that can be a lot of fun. The Thoth is a lot easier for me to draw correspondences in, and I think that that's part of why I really like it. But I still do that with RWS, and then color. And how I associate color, there's an aspect of it that's very personal to me where I associate certain colors with certain feelings, and then there are times when I will associate them with chakras. So if I'm seeing a ton of yellow, I am, not of course, but for those who are familiar with chakras and general colors we associate with them, if I'm seeing a lot of yellow, I'm thinking that there's something about the solar plexus going on, and that empowerment, that self, that core area and what that entails. If I'm seeing a lot of green or pink, I'm going to think heart chakra, things like that. So I will sometimes go into that in my readings. Those are correspondences I draw on. I'm trying to think about other little unique things that I will do within a reading. There are times when I fan the deck and pick the cards that way. I would say when I read for others, there are times when I have them, depending, and I think that this changes a lot, but there are times when I'll have somebody pick all of their own cards. So I'll shuffle a bit, and then I'll have them shuffle a bit and just start handing me cards that they pick. And there are times when I find that to be more beneficial. So this is less about me and more about the person, but when I am reading for others, I will sometimes do what feels right in any given circumstance, and really have them play an active role at times. I'm trying to think what else. That's hard. Now I feel boring, not boring as a reader, but the fact that I can't think of these little quirks. I would say that I have very personal correspondences with some of the cards that make me think of certain things that that I didn't learn from any book. And I think, of course, when you're reading for a while, that's something that's natural, and you probably should have those sorts of things, and we all have them. And for me to kind of give you a rundown of all of them would, well, I'd be here for hours, and I'd probably still not even remember all of them, and I'd get all flustered and mixed up. But depending on circumstances, there are definitely times when I will completely circumvent a traditional meaning of a card based on what I feel in a reading. So I'm not hard and fast about sticking to traditional meanings of cards at all. And I guess that's a little bit of a quirk. There are definitely times when I find cards to be more literal in their imagery when something's happening, and I'm suddenly feeling very compelled to think that what is going on in that circumstance is descriptive of what is being spoken about in terms of the reading, or that, yeah, just certain things that just don't quite align with the actual meaning of a card. So, what other things? What habits I have? I mean, I have like habits of like cleansing my decks and putting them away and organizing them, and energetically feeling like I need to imbue something into the deck before it does something for me. So I will either imbue it with my own energy when I'm reading for myself in a way, very consciously, or I'll have a client do that by holding the deck. If it's a third party reading, I will almost take a time before I lay out the cards to be almost a third party, or not a third party, but a conduit, I would say, for their energy to flow into the deck. And I like the idea of that. Yeah, okay, I think that's about it. So, yeah, these are some questions that I had prepared, and I will leave them down below if anybody decides that this is something they'd want to respond to. If not, no worries. I just wanted to really share with you guys a bit about how I read, or who I am as a reader when it comes to actually getting into reading the cards. So I hope you guys enjoyed this and maybe learned a thing or two about me, if that was of interest to you. And I do encourage you to, even if you don't make a video response, to let me know down below some things that maybe resonated with you, or things that are unique to you, even if you just want to answer the questions in the comments or something. I'm very curious, so that'll all be down below. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and until next time, bye guys.